but I would advise anyone that really wants to make headway and really wants to take their business serious to have a valuation and a business assessment done on their company so that they can understand what is going to add value and then start to build a company around that.
So I think there's certain things that business owners can do, entrepreneurs can do, if they're looking to scale through acquisition. They probably need to have a relationship with a bank. They probably need to understand what an influx of 25% to 50% or even 100% of new clients would their systems break down? Are they prepared for the infrastructure prepared to service all that influx of new business that they're acquiring potentially? Welcome to Constructive Interference, where visionaries sharpen visionaries. I'm your host, Rufus Cressend. Diving into the minds of those who dare to dream big and innovate boldly. Join me as we explore their stories, uncover their challenges, and learn from their journeys. Let's get inspired and sharpen our visions together. Welcome to Constructive Interference. In today's episode, we have Joel Duran with Duran Advisors. And before, Joel, we get into your business, I want the audience to get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire type questions. If you want to pass on any of them, that's fine. Don't think, just answer. But I think this will be kind of fun. So I'll just start with an easy one. You a morning person or night owl?
Oh, night owl.
Night owl. Dog person, cat person?
Oh, dog person.
You like reading books or listening to books?
I do not have the time to read books. I have to listen to books with the family, you know?
What is your favorite book of all time, though? Which one?
I mean, are we talking about books or are we talking
Let's talk about entrepreneurial books, not like fiction, nonfiction, stuff that just basically just
I can tell you the one that I absolutely recommend the most to clients, which is E-Myth.
Thank you.
mean, that is actually one of your recommendations.
True.
When I was living in California, I listened to the audiobook on the way there, and I was like, this is fantastic. And I think that the author's story is also fantastic if you're an entrepreneur, you are suffering until you make it, you know? And sometimes it takes time. And when you look at the author of E-Myth, he did not make it until he was in his 50s. So think about the mental struggle that he had to go to, maybe feeling like he's not good enough, you know, and then boom, he hits it big in his 50s and he's been successful ever since.
What cartoon did you watch on Saturday morning?
Oh man, you know, the one that sticks out clearly in my mind as like is Spider-Man, and it was Spider-Man with Iceman and Firestar.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that was a good one. It was like, was it Spider Friends or?
And then later I read The New Warriors, which also had Firestar in it, which was fun.
So mine was Speed Racer. Now, I loved Speed Racer, and I'm a little bit older than you, but when I would go sleep at my cousin's house, we'd have the Friday night sleepover, and Saturday morning we go watch cartoons like any normal kid would do on Saturday morning, but she wouldn't allow us to watch Speed Racer. And I'm like, why doesn't your mom let you watch Speed Racer? Go back and watch Speed Racer. That is the most violent cartoon that I have ever seen. You just don't register that when you're a kid, but every episode, there is multiple car wrecks. There is multiple people dying. There's cars falling or launching into like molten lava, okay? People screaming to their death. Yeah, that was a kid's cartoon. And actually, if you even think about Tom and Jerry, that was a pretty violent cartoon as well. But anyway, so I digress. So thank you for answering some of those rapid fire questions. I got plenty of them. So Joel, tell us a little bit about just the business, but what's kind of top of mind right now with the business? What's going on with you?
Yeah, so I'm M&A advisor, own my own brokerage, and in a nutshell, we sell businesses, right? Which is a fancy way of saying we sell businesses. And when I was thinking about this earlier, I was at a business meeting before this, and I was thinking about this because I had a conversation with someone the other day. And really what is top of mind for me right now is the opportunity. As an entrepreneur, you have an incredible opportunity in a down market. One, if you own an established business, this is really a great test because the good businesses during a down market are going to succeed and they're going to acquire market share. And I want to talk about that a little bit more. But anybody can make money when the market is doing well and the economy is doing well. But the real test of a business is how well they do in a down market.
Oh, absolutely.
When sales go down a little bit, when margins maybe get hit, and that is an opportunity if you own a business, because you have the opportunity to acquire talent that has been downsized, laid off, whatever, or maybe they've just gone out of business. A competitor's gone out of business, so you have an opportunity to acquire talent, but you also have the opportunity to acquire market share, and that's what you're going to see the bigger, more successful companies doing. Now, if you're an entrepreneur that wants to get started, then you have the ability to do those same things and really grow at a much different scale than when everyone's making money, because you're able to really truly see the cracks in the system, and you're able to say, oh wow, these guys, thought whatever model would be there forever, and it's really going to expose that that's just not a viable long-term model right now.
Now, you're saying plenty of opportunities, but in my experience, opportunities are always going to be there, and sometimes the best opportunities are the ones that you don't take. But I think in most cases, a lot of those entrepreneurs, a lot of those businesses are not going to be prepared to act on those opportunities. So you being in that space, how would you advise to another entrepreneur to prepare themselves for when opportunity inevitably will present itself, to be prepared to act and be not necessarily the highest bidder, but the best buyer in these particular cases?
Well, the old saying, luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. It all starts with good business planning. And that's a lot of the work that we do, which is one, valuation work to know where someone is, but something that we do on every transaction and even on every valuation now is a full business assessment. And depending on which level you're operating in, we're going to do a different business assessment. We're going to use different tools to do that business assessment. Typically at the 0 to 10 million in revenue range, we're going to score you on the 8 key drivers of value for those businesses. And it's things that when you hear about them, you're like, oh, that just makes a lot of sense. Things like employee dependence, vendor dependence, how dependent is the business on the owner, recurring revenue, and being able to move the needle on these things is really going to dramatically impact the overall value of your company. And it's also going to make your company easier to run. So that is something that if you as a business owner, everybody has their blind spots and everybody, thinks their baby's gorgeous, but I would advise anyone, and it doesn't have to be through us, but I would advise anyone that really wants to make headway and really wants to take their business serious to have a valuation and a business assessment done on their company so that they can understand what is going to add value and then start to build a company around that. And the assessments that we use, that is what has shaped my business, and that is what is allowing us to pick up market share as the economy starts to slow.
So along the lines of preparation now, so think about it, the quote is, the best time to change the shingles on your roof is when it's not raining. Same concept as, you don't want to go get homeowners insurance when there's a hurricane in the Gulf. It's not going to happen. So the best time to get life insurance is when you're healthy. So the same concept is start preparing to have a business before you have a business in mind. So I think there's certain things that business owners can do, entrepreneurs can do, if they're looking to scale through acquisition, that they can't say, okay, I just want to be in the game. They have to basically either have some certain kind of reserves. They probably need to have a relationship with a bank. They probably need to understand what an influx of 25% to 50% or even 100% of new clients would their systems break down? Are they prepared for the infrastructure prepared to service all that influx of new business that they're acquiring potentially? So is that something that you work with people in stress testing, kind of, okay, here's what your business can handle. You should look for acquisitions that's this size, because anything beyond that, you're not the best buyer and you're going to take more risk than necessary. But if you want to be in a higher acquisition game, then you need to do this, this, and this.
Yeah, so I don't know if you realize this, but I am actually a certified acquisition integration manager.
Okay.
So there are, depending on the size of the company, and let me just kind of, for the listeners out there that don't understand the different tiers of business, we're gonna talk about small to medium-sized businesses here. So what is called Main Street is 0 to 5 million in revenue, up until 2 million in EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And then above that, you have the middle market, and that's split into 3 segments. And the place that you and I are most active is that lower middle market, which is 5 million to 150 million in revenue. So a company that is a lower middle market company is going to have a very clear identity of who they are and what they do, whereas a Main Street company is going to have less of an idea. So when you're looking at growth through acquisition, you need to have a clear understanding of who you are. And more importantly, and I've seen this time and time again, where the cultures don't match, or the types of businesses, the way that the businesses are run do not match. And I'll give you a very specific example. A very corporate company acquiring a company that the owner was very deeply involved in doing a lot of the work is not going to be a great fit. Because in that instance, once that owner leaves, if they're not staying on to transition the business and work for that other company, then you have a real talent problem. And so the growth through acquisition is really an art. We do buyer side engagements, and we have a detailed, trust me, as detailed as you want to go with acquisition integration. We have a program for that. And at the Main Street level, your needs for a deep, planned out integration are less. They're still important, because you need to stage things so that they don't damage the business and long term, and that the business is able to transition smoothly. Things like, HR, things like when do you tell the management team? When do you tell the employees? All of those things factor into a good transition. And there are different programs for those different levels. And what you kind of alluded to is also just a basic preparation of what it's going to take to get there. And that does look like figuring out how you're going to pay for it, whether it's going to be, a combination of debt or cash and debt, or whether it's going to be debt and equity using a partner like a private equity group or something like that. So yes, it is often the most overlooked strategy, growth through acquisition at the Main Street level. And I would say it's even overlooked oftentimes at that lower middle market level until you get partnered with a professional team like a private equity group or something like that.
No, and I totally recommend anybody that's wanting to acquire and they've never gone through an acquisition before is to work with someone that has. Just like anything else, that if you want to do something successfully and you don't know how to do it, find someone that has done it successfully and ask them how they did it. It doesn't have to be that complex. So even when my clients, so many clients want to be in real estate because they know somebody that's in real estate, that is in rental real estate. I'm like, okay, not everybody should be in real estate, but I love real estate as an investment for the right people. So the first thing I'll tell someone is says, okay, everybody knows a real estate agent. Go tell your real estate agent friends, relatives, and people down the street. Everybody knows somebody. Tell them that you're looking for a rental property. tell them to find you a couple of options, figure out what the rental in that area is, bring me that information. Don't buy the property, bring me that information. We'll then assess it, and I will help you understand cap rates, help you understand whether or not this is a good rental property, what kind of rate of return can you expect, but also what the risk is associated with that. And that will start to, I guess, shape and create those boundaries of what you're now looking for. Because just to say I want to be a real estate rental property investor is a very broad statement. You need to narrow in, okay, there's a lot. What area do you want to be? Do you want to have a single family, multifamily? Do you want to have multiple single families on one block? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that, but also in relation to what? Growth through acquisition, you have the organic growth. So ultimately, you're pulling resources away from your business to go do acquisitions. And are you prepared to do that? Because all the resources is all hands on deck. We have this brand new company with all these brand new customers and all of this integration that's happening. What about your existing business that's basically paying the bills currently? So there's a lot of preparation that goes into whether it be acquiring a property or acquiring a rental property. I mean, that's the type of, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's where people are intimidated. When you say, do you want to own real estate? Well, yeah, it makes sense. Most people want it. Should most people do it? Absolutely not, because they haven't done the necessary steps to be prepared. And I think that's what I'm getting at with the business owners, that sure, everybody thinks it's a good idea to grow through acquisition, but is everyone prepared to do that? Absolutely not. I think there's some real work that you have to do. Otherwise, it's just you're biting off more than you can chew and chewing like hell. So some people have that risk for appetite, but if you can, you're never going to eliminate the risk when acquiring a property, but you can do certain things to mitigate that risk. And by having someone like you that can help ask better questions, and that's the problem, I'm saying wisdom in general is not always knowing the right answers, it's about asking better questions. That's where genius is, actually. So I think that's where you have to go through someone that has already bought and sold businesses. Now, for example, most businesses will only maybe acquire once or twice. Well, they got to get it right the first time. How many times have you helped someone buy or sell a business?
Over 100.
Right. So is it, by any chance, is there things that you know that they won't know?
This is one of my greatest assets to, we do a lot of sell side work to my sellers on a transaction, is just telling them what is normal and what is not normal. I mean, I have just this endless amount of horror stories of people doing things that on their face seem like a good idea. Protect your private information. Don't give the buyer any financials. Makes no sense. They're not going to pay anything.
It's like when a client comes to me, or let's just say somebody wants to retire. Now, most people, they've been working for a job 35, 40 years. They're only going to retire one time. Okay. This is their one shot at doing it right. They got it. And I almost ask, when's the last time you did something for the first time ever and got it right the first time? Rarely do you get it nailed the first time. Well, this is retirement. This is your life savings. You've built up 40 years, 45, 50 years even to this moment, and you're going to go at it alone and get it right on the first try. How many times are you planning to retire? Most people once. How many times do you think I've retired people? Hundreds of times. So do I know where the mistakes were made? Do I know better questions to ask? Do I know how to prepare them, saying, hey, oh, by the way, you're leaving this job that is, you've wrapped up your whole identity into it, by the way. Your social life is wrapped up into it. Who you are as a person is basically what you do. That's what you've done. Now you're going to be taking on this brand new identity because you're no longer going to have that job. Are you prepared for that? What are you retiring to? We know what you're retiring from. So again, that's the wisdom of working with someone that's done it before. So that's where I guess I'm really beating that to the listeners that are wanting to acquire. I think, yes, absolutely. Growth through acquisition is a fantastic thing to do, but don't be stupid about it. There's a smarter way to do it. And the cost of you learning that wisdom on your own and making those mistakes is going to be far, I'm talking 10x, 100x times than the cost of hiring someone like you.
Yeah, and part of that, a big part of that, one is thinking strategically from the outset. Some free tips here. I have people just that I know all the time say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this business. And I'm like, well, you already own this other business. you should be buying a business that is complementary to that. And I always use the analogy of, when we're trying to find a buyer for a seller, we're trying to find a synergistic buyer because there's different levels of valuation, right? And that synergistic buyer is going to be someone where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3. And that's what you should be thinking about as a business owner is instead of going out and trying to diversify and having a completely different business, which seems like a good idea, right? But when you look at the best investors of all time, they go all in on things that they've done a deep study of. Warren Buffett is heavily invested in just a couple companies. He's not in the S&P 500, but that's his advice to people who don't know what they're doing. So that would be my advice is, you have to think strategically and you have to have a plan. And with those things, you can get some really, really great results. And using someone like myself, you can save yourself a ton of time and a ton of money and have real confidence in what you're doing versus being a statistic.
And I'll just say to the audience, look, wisdom doesn't come easily or cheaply. Make sure that you invest in yourself is probably the best investment you can make. And investing in yourself is buying wisdom. Okay, buying wisdom instead of learning it for yourself. And when you can hire someone like Joel, you're buying that wisdom. And I think that's the real takeaway. Now, that's on the buyer side. Let's switch to the seller side. So you represent obviously both. Now, someone comes to you and says, okay, I'm ready to get out of this business. I want to sell it. I'm going to go to a business broker like yourself. You're going to put it on the open market. Do you spend time with them first to say, okay, yeah, we can go to the market today and this is what you're going to be worth. But if we were to do this, this, and this over the next year or 6 months or 3 years, potentially, we could potentially be at this value. Is that part of the conversation or is it either way?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, most brokers do not do that. Our process is completely different. We do evaluation and we do the business assessment. And one of the most recent examples I can think of is a restaurant group putting about $1 million to the bottom line, came to me and we did the valuation, we did the assessment, and part of that assessment is a follow-up interview where we talk about the results. And so we went through the results and I was like, look, these are the 3 places that you're weak in a buyer's opinion. And this is what a buyer will pay the most money for. What would it take to move the needle on this scale? And the answer was, well, it really wouldn't take much. We already have a program built out for this. And what kind of time would that take to institute? Well, to hire 2 weeks, to train maybe a month. So, and then when I'm going through the scenario planner for this, the increase in value was roughly $500,000. So if they had gone to someone else and they had just taken it to market, it's a good company. So it's justified to go straight to market. But if they hadn't just taken that extra step of assessment and looking at the business at a deeper level and what a buyer wants and what they're capable of, then they would have missed that $500,000 in value.
So when I say make that investment in yourself, think about it from the standpoint of the seller without someone like you is saying, okay, I'm going to go to the open market as is with my business and get fair market value today. Or I can maybe pay somewhere around 5 figures to someone like Joel to work in my business for the next 6 to 3 months to 36 months, who knows, to basically increase the enterprise value of my company by potentially 25 or 50%. And that could potentially mean 7 figures. So let's just say 3 years. In a 3-year time frame, if you could spend a 5-figure amount to get a 7-figure amount, how many times would you do that? Probably as often as you could, right?
Yeah.
So from a good return on investment, investing in yourself and investing in those blind spots and not knowing what you don't know and doing the work. And most of the time what I find with the business owners is they're selling a job. They're selling their job, okay? you want to sell a company, you want to sell a system. And I think that's one of the multipliers that really moves the needle too, Joel, is that when the business owner is the lead technician, the lead relationship manager of that business. I mean, everybody works with Fred. Everybody loves Fred. The reason why we're here is because of Fred. Well, Fred's selling the business and selling it to Todd. Well, nobody knows Todd. Okay, well, that's going to reflect on the value. But if Fred could have been doing work behind the scenes over the next 3 years and transition those relationships to key employees that are going to be transitioned with the business to Todd, I'm making up people, obviously, but that's the idea, is that as the owner starts to work less as a technician and more as an owner that owns a system versus owning the job, that's where I think most people are going to see those multipliers really climb. But it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just say, okay, I've decided not to be a technician anymore, I'm going to be a business owner. It is a gradual process. So I think just like anything else, planning to sell your business is probably a smart thing to do versus just saying, you know what, I'm having burnout. And I think that's what most people do. They'll probably come to you and say, I'm just burnt out. I'm tired of burning at both ends, and I reached a certain age, I've reached a certain amount of savings, I just can't do it anymore. Get me out of here, get me the most money you can. And that's not you're not in a position to be a good seller at that point.
Well, we are both certified exit planners, and I hate the name exit planning because it implies that it's something that you do at the end. But the core premise of exit planning is just good business planning, being ready to sell at all times, and having everything put together so that you have that capability. Because what really, really hurts is, and I can't tell you how many times I've been in this situation where you have a situation that's changed in the seller's life, death, disability, divorce, and they have to take pennies on the dollar for something that they've spent a decade, 2 decades, maybe 40 years of their life working on. And it's a sad situation.
Well, even when I take on the business owners and the entrepreneurs as clients, and that's really where I enjoy working with the most. I mean, that's the funnest part of what I do, is because the dynamics of every business is so different. So it's never a same typical day at the office when we're working with business owners. But I think that's the dynamics of talking with them and helping them recognize the enterprise value that can grow. But as it relates to their own financial personal plan, I'm basically having to ask up front. It says, look, is the business going to be a major asset in this retirement plan or not? Because if it is, then we need to start treating it as it is an investment, because it is. So my point being is, if they're really not planning on selling the business because they own a job, they don't really own a business, then I'm saying, okay, great, let's just run the business into the ground and let's extract as much cash flow as we can and just go into traditional savings like most people do. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if we're going to count on this business as being a major retirement asset for you that's going to fund and recreate your paycheck for the rest of your life that you can't outlive, then I think we need to be more deliberate with that. Because if you have potentially $1 million asset with me, chances are you're going to check it every now and then, and it goes up and down. But yet we don't do that with our businesses. And that's why, even as exit planners, I think the key thing that blows my mind is that the lack of valuations, the flying blindness of business owners not understanding what their enterprise value is and what to do about it. Meaning that there are detractors and there are enhancers that are in everyone's business. That valuation will put the spotlight on the things that are making you more valuable, but also put a spotlight on the things that are keeping you from being more valuable. Well, that's starting to smell like a business plan to me. Meaning that over the next year, we're going to do all these things that the spotlight that says detractors from the value, we're going to start fixing those things and start preparing that business. And in doing so, we're going to increase the bottom line profitability of the company, which makes it more attractive to more buyers, hence a higher price. So it just lines up. It makes sense. Always comes back to business valuation. You just need to know these things. So anyway.
Yeah. And I would say that in addition to that it's it's also about investing in the education of yourself about how a buyer is going to view your company, how the market's going to view your company, and then using those viewpoints to make decisions that are going to dynamically impact the value of your business.
Right.
You know?
And as a CEO of your company, that is your job to know these things. You need to know what increases the value. Like the CEO's job is really easy to measure. Is the company's enterprise value growing year over year, and is the profits growing? If those things are not happening, that is an absolute reflection of the CEO. And if you are an owner and the CEO, that's your job to know these things. Now, do you need to be an expert and know it at Joel's level? Absolutely not. There are people like Joel that you can hire that says, hey, come in here, tell me what I don't know, train me, what would you do if you were me, help me ask better questions, but we need to start somewhere. And I think that's that paralysis by analysis hurdle that a lot of people just don't know where to start. Not many people can take the other side of this argument that I'm giving. The problem is, why aren't they doing anything about it? They don't know where to start. So I'm really glad you're here and we're talking about this because this is so important. And it's a shame that people need to be brought here. And that's the whole idea behind this podcast is because it's the amplification of two visionaries sitting together saying, hey, doing what you do, we need to let people know about this. And it's just that whole idea of other visionaries, other entrepreneurs. They can't learn this from their employees. They can't learn this necessarily from their peers. They need to learn it from other entrepreneurs that have been in this space before. So, because, well, quite frankly, I'm doing it for my business. You're doing it for your business. So,
and
we speak that language.
Yeah, the program that we use, it's not just something that we use. It's something that has dynamically changed our company and has made our company, has changed our cash flow. Something we reference as the valuation. You're either cash rich or you're cash poor. Your business is either a cash cow or it's a cash drain. So we've used it to change things like that. We've used it to change how we monetize our clients, to change the outcomes for our clients so they get better outcomes and they're actually spending less money. So there's a lot of value to be had in what is really defined as strategic planning. And an example I want to use is we both use EOS, and one of the examples I heard with EOS was and one of the ways that we like to work with EOS implementers and practitioners is that it's one thing to be able to itemize the problems and the things that you want to do as a company. It's another thing to have an outside frame of reference as to what the market values and what is going to increase that overall value. And then once you have that awareness, you can tie those two things together and you can start to frame your maybe personal goals or your management's goals. You can start to meld those together with what's going to increase the overall value of the company and really get some exponential growth there.
Okay. So Joel, as we start to kind of wind this up, wrap it up, I like to ask my guests this question. It's kind of a fun one, but I would say if you were to meet your future self, a 5-year version of yourself was to come back in time, what advice would they be giving to you right now? What kind of things would they be saying, Joel, stop doing, Joel, start doing these things?
So this is saying that I'm coming back from 5 years.
Your 5-year future self is advising you today.
Would have been to gas pedal hiring the people that I want to use to grow. That would be what my 5-year self would be telling me.
And let me ask you a different question. If there were 2 Joel Durans in your business, what could your business do with 2 of you?
Man, this is obviously we could just do more,
Yeah. The reason why I ask is that a lot of times it changes your way of thinking of how can I invest in my business. Meaning that if there were 2 of me, I would have one of me do a lot of these technician things and one of me do all these on the business type things. And it helps you prioritize where the most important tasks are. It makes you look at what you're doing currently and saying, okay, I need to hire someone to start doing these other things because there realistically is not 2 of me. There's only 1 of me. So if there were 2 of me and I give that job to the second me to do all these things. Why am I not doing those things all the time? Last question is, if you inherited $500,000 from a rich uncle that you never knew existed, but there's a stipulation on that $500,000 that it has to be invested in your business or you forfeit the whole amount, where would you invest that $500,000?
Interesting. So, when I look at that capital, it would probably be just doing what we're already doing, which is investing in growth through hiring and systems development.
So people,
as well as education.
People and systems would be your biggest investment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would just use it to ramp what we're doing. I mean, we're already doing those things, so it would just be okay, great. Now we can do this, twice as fast.
Good deal. So, Joel, why don't you tell the audience where they can find you or anything you want the audience to know?
Yeah, so our website is duranadvisors.com, and you can see all of our social media links if you want some more information on who we are and what we do, as well as we have the full accompaniment of web pages. And the easiest way to have a conversation with me about buying, selling, or valuing a business would be just to go to the top of any of our pages and just book a free consultation.
And I would absolutely say, if you have not done a valuation and you are a business owner, you owe it to the company to know what you're worth. Because if progress cannot be made until reality is defined, and that reality needs to be defined if you are truly a good business owner. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I would real quick say that we do have part of our business assessment tools. It does have an estimation of value. So while it's not a full valuation, as anyone who's listening to this podcast can go and book a valuation appointment on our website, and we will give you a free business assessment and a free estimate of value, along with a 1-hour consultation to go through the results.
So they literally have nothing to lose.
It costs you nothing.
There you go. Only to gain. Well, thank you so much, Joel. It's truly been my privilege, my honor, my pleasure to have you here. You're a dear friend, and I love talking shop with you. So we're definitely going to have to do it again. But I appreciate you being here.
Next time I'll have you on my podcast.
Love it. Love it. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Constructive Interference. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow visionary. Keep dreaming big, and remember, the only limits are the ones you set for yourself. Until next time, stay sharp.